came out of about 3 or 4 writing sessions. We have sort of jamming sessions where we have a bit of fun and play, and sometimes a bit of music appears that interests us that might become a song. And it's actually, that's the fun part. It's all fun, actually.
The hard thing is when you start the writing process, you have lots of ideas. And the first 2 or 3 days, you bang, 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 bang. And they're all strong ideas, you know, because they've been building up. Then it gets a little more difficult because then you're having to create new ideas. And sometimes you start accepting ideas just because you did them, not that they're particularly good. And that's the hard point, when you have to start becoming cruel to yourself, say, well, it's okay, but it's not as good as we did before. So that's the hard bit. But it's fun coming up with new music. It's fun coming up with something, you look at each other and everybody's smiling. And that's great.
In a way, whatever we do becomes us, becomes Deep Purple. There's no formula or sound that we're aiming for. We're just aiming to please ourselves musically.
It's all about human chemistry, really. I think when you get a bunch of guys together that have been together as long as us, there's no category other than Deep Purple for us. And it's like a bunch of guys that meet together in the pub or in the office or at home with relatives or whatever it might be. And you talk about this, you talk about that, and it's always a fresh conversation, even though the theme may be vaguely continuous or connected with the past. There's always a fresh element to it. And so, you know, that's what you do when you go to the pub. It was a turning point, wasn't it? It was a big turning point because working with Bob. He said something very interesting when we were talking, before we even worked together. He said, I would like to see you guys doing what you used to do. Not in terms of the way you play your music, but the way you approach your music. And that is, if you find something good and you want to extemporize upon a theme, you do it. On the first 3 albums I was with, the band and Roger, there were only 7 tracks on each album, and some of them were quite long, 7 minutes, 8, 10 minutes long. And the reason was the music was a good vehicle to have extended pieces on. And the construction, the orchestral elements, or the soloists and the rhythmic drive were all developed until it reached a natural end, instead of being compressed into those 3-minute things. I think during the Middle Ages, if you like, in the 80s and 90s, there was a tendency, as we produced ourselves, to kind of think of the radio element. Going back to Smoke on the Water, that was 7 minutes long at Machine Head. No one heard it apart from the live crowds, and it wasn't until somebody came along to a gig in LA and heard the audience reaction to it that they thought, yeah, this would be good, play on the radio. So they cut it down to 3¼ minutes. We were never any good at making pop songs. I mean, Deep Purple is primarily an instrumental band, and that's what we should do. And that's what Bob was saying with Now What. He said, let's just relax and extend your stuff. I'll tell you when it's getting too much, but just enjoy yourselves with the music. And so the old way of approaching construction came back, and everything got a little bit more exciting again, I think, because it was allowed to flow freely. And I think that showed instantly in Now What. It was a big difference to previous records, which I loved the other stuff as well, but this was definitely a major milestone as far as we were concerned. And so this inFinite record is a natural extension of that. It's not the same, but it's walking along the same path.
Since we did Perfect Strangers back in '84, it was no thrill from being in the studio. It's just one of the things you do. From making the Now What record in a great studio and everything working the way it should and everything being easy, recording became fun again. And that continued using the same situation on inFinite. It just felt right, it felt easy, it felt good. But in the past, we put ourselves in situations where it was almost impossible to make a record, you know, making it life difficult for ourselves. So for me, it's been a revelation the last 4 or 5 years, just enjoying being in the studio and listening to the first 1 or 2 takes and going, wow, that sounds good, you know.
Being in Nashville as well was a tremendous spur to us all, because it's such a centre for music that it's kind of missing now. You know, London used to be like that, but there's no music anywhere anymore, really.
No, New York's gone, LA's gone.
It's all gone, but Nashville is absolutely throbbing, so it kind of rubs off on you. And everybody in the studio was so enthusiastic, and they knew what they were doing. As Ian said, you know, they knew how to record a band. You know, in the old days with tape, you'd record something in a studio terrified. The red light went on, and you play, and then you go in and they'd say, come in and listen. And when you listen back, you could hardly believe it was you. what have they done to it? You know, tape. It was so exciting, and we were getting that in Nashville. Well, it was great.
Well, he definitely trusts his.
Yes, he does.
And if he doesn't like something, he just tells you. You get, now stop, 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 and explain why what you thought was great wasn't so great. Because he has a great musical knowledge too, he can say it in a way that you understand where you went wrong. And he saves you wasting 4 or 5 hours going, you know, to a dead-end street. And that's part of his really great value in the control room. You don't waste time. You just get it done.
He'd spent quite a bit of time in London, and I used to do a lot of sessions. So when I was doing something with Bob, if he didn't like it, he'd talk to me in London studio speak with a London accent. No, love, no, it ain't work. I think we better look for someone else. Who's that other keyboard player?
Canadian accent going.
Probably the highest chart position we'd had in decades. So that was a really a good shot in the arm for us, and a good shot in the arm for all our fans as well. The idea of going back in the studio with Bob was that we couldn't wait actually to get back in the studio. It was that good an experience. And the thing about working with Bob is he insists on everything being as live as possible. So we're a live band, and we've spent most of our time on the road, on stage. And the studio is kind of a weird place to be creating music because it's a bit cold. But when we start playing together, all that disappears. And Bob's words to us on Now What was stretch out, 2 magic words. And I think since then we've taken his advice.
Told me to get out.
You came back again though.
Well, Stephen Hawking said that before the Big Bang there was nothing. Well, he's obviously wrong, because there obviously was something before the Big Bang, even though it wasn't in our understanding, it was a metaphysical, whatever it might be. So therefore, infinity does exist in a series of bubbles, or whatever, however you like to look at it. And if infinity does exist, then there was no beginning. And if there was no beginning, then we're not here. By definition.
It's all Stephen Hawking's fault then.
Well, no, he just picked up, didn't he, where Euclid left off. I mean, so I blame the Queen myself. She's infinite.
People can read a lot of what they like into the word infinite, especially that's broken up into 2 cases of letters. Basically, it wasn't our idea. It's the record company's idea and a suggestion, and it was a good one, because left to our own devices, we'll argue till the cows come home about what's going to be the album title. It's always better to have an album title before you start, which we didn't have this time. And so when that came up, it was the decision of least resistance, I suppose. And you can read into it what you like.
I think when you're enjoying creating something new, you do find a different spirit in it. And if the guys in the studio are enjoying it, there's a good chance the listener will enjoy it too. If the guys in the studio are a bit bored, that comes through as well, you know. So I think it's about, any art is about connection, isn't it? If I talk to you artistically and you don't get what I'm saying, then there's no communication, no nothing. But if you understand what I'm saying, even if it's not words, then the communication has worked and the art is successful.
What do you mean by that?
I've no idea. And I stand by that.
Oh, I noticed.
Actually, I sit by it.
Yeah, it was very live. We rehearsed long and hard in Nashville for 2 weeks with Bob, and a lot of the solos were live. So we had a lot of momentum. I think that's what comes across on the album. I mean, certainly listening to it the last 2 days. I remember I was in the room in the apartments in Nashville, and I was playing a rehearsal tape of one of the tracks, and there was a guy in mending the central heating. And he looked at me listening. He said, "Man, that sounds just like Deep Purple."
I didn't say that. I said I was an angry young man, then I went through a period of complacency in my middle age, and now I'm fucking furious again. And without the F word, it doesn't make any sense. But I think, yeah, life goes like that, doesn't it? A bit up and down, and with a bit of that in the middle, you know. So I'm angry about lots of things. I'm not angry, I'm just involved and reactionary and pissed off. Politics mostly, That gets me excited. Yeah, and it's good to get worked up because you can get some venom into your work then. I like that.
When you're a kid, you start out doing this stuff because it's fun. Then it becomes your business and you have to treat it a little more seriously, but it should still be fun.
Yeah, you don't take it seriously.
And even, you know, how many decades afterwards, you go on stage, it's still fun, you know. It can be chaotic fun, it can be disastrous fun, it can be amazing fun. Even the bad bits when you look back. Nobody makes you go on stage. You go on stage because you want to. It's fun.
It is a family, yeah.
Dysfunctional, but...
As all families are, really, yeah. But it's a changing family. It's, how many people in the band now? 14 or something like that we've been through?
I think it's even more, it's deeper than that. I don't know, if you go back and watch video of, say, 40 years ago, are you that same guy? Do you recognise that guy? No, I don't. I don't recognise the young me. I can't remember what he was like.
I'd never wear those boots again.
And so that changes, you know you were there, you did stuff, but occasionally I see little clips come up on YouTube and I have no recollection of me doing that. It's so long ago, and a small moment of your life suddenly is captured forever, and you see, I know it's me. I have no memory of doing these things at all. They're different people than what you are now, so it's frightening, really.
I just recently looked at a list of all the gigs we've ever done. And it goes on for days. I mean, page after page after page after page, and you realise that sudden moment that you're looking at your life. It's a very fortunate life, but it does require a great deal of sacrifice from family and your freedom. You lose your friends and stuff like that. But on the other hand, it's a kind of destiny. It feels like you didn't choose that life, it chose you. And you end up being where you are through a kind of series of minor miracles and scrapes and fights and bad times and good times, and somehow they all kind of roll into one, and here we are, that experience of going through those, even though you forget them. I mean, I looked at gigs, I thought, I can't remember playing there, but it's all part of what you become, and that experience goes into how we play and how we write.
The hardest thing to do is to create a piece of music like Smoke on the Water. The simplicity it's difficult, man. That's the nonsense of it. Being complicated is quite easy. It's limitless, you can do what you want. Keeping something simple and to the point, that's...
Yeah, it's the hardest thing to do.
That's very, very hard to find. In rock and roll, sound's incredibly important. Rock and roll pushed the way we record things to get clarity and power and everything that we accept now. And if you don't have that, when you play against other records, there's something missing. So the ability to capture that power and make people believe that they're getting the same impression they would if they're in a live concert. If you don't have that, the record doesn't sound right. It's got to sound powerful. Assuming you're talking about powerful music, you know. And again, Mr. Ezrin is very, very knowledgeable about how to do it, where to do it. When we were doing it, you go in, first take, 2 takes. There's no messing around for 2 or 3 hours trying to get a sound. You go in there, it's great, and then it gets better.
What makes a good song? Good song to me is something that surprises me. There's so much music out, and some great music too. Even now there's some great music. But once you've heard a verse and a chorus and you know what's coming next, it kind of loses its interest for me, which is why I don't listen to a lot of current pop or hard rock or anything like that. I listen to a lot of diverse, different kinds of music because I want to be stimulated by music, not just entertained.
I think Ray Charles said the best thing. He said, it's something that from the first 2 or 3 bars, you know it. He said, once you've said that, you don't have to say anything more because it's been said and everybody's involved and we're all part of the same thing. It's striking a common chord with people. I mean, that's what the Beatles did. Yeah. I don't really understand how they did it, but that's what they did. They connected with every single person. You couldn't unhear it.
It's a different world now, partly because it's a different world and partly because we're not of that age anymore. For us then, it was just life. And what happened to the bands of the 80s and the 90s is that they started imitating life. Life became a kind of a stereotypical choice of lifestyle, whereas us, it wasn't a choice, it was just, it's what we did.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, day to day, it wasn't all completely wild. As you look back decades, it becomes condensed into a wild time. And it's only looking back that you realize that it was a magic time. At the time, it didn't seem that magic. You just accepted it day by day. Oh, yeah, this guy called Hendrix, oh, great. You didn't think ahead as to what you would think looking back 20 or 30 years.
The great thing about that time was we had no machines, no technology, and we had a lot more time, didn't we?
Yeah,
to do fun stuff.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's part of it too. Well, that's the interesting thing now, finding which of these new songs will work in a stage environment.
I think probably of all the things that we have to do, I think that's the most challenging, is putting together and keeping fresh a good stage set. We never used to do what we thought people wanted us to do. We always did, like most bands I think of our kind, we did what pleased us and what made us feel good, and with keeping our fingers crossed that the audience would like it too. If you do something that your heart and soul is in, really think that you've got a good set and you're happy about it, then that transmits itself to the audience. Hopefully it always has done, and I hope it will continue to go that way.
If you're a new band, it's really easy. You play your album. This is going to be the 20th album. Now, you cannot even take one song from each album. You couldn't do that in a night. You won't have enough time. So it's the toughest thing, as Ian said, we have to do. We've got to be very, very selective and very cruel sometimes. I mean, we don't compromise, but on some things we have to say, well, you can't do that and that. You know, something has to go. And it's tough.
And there's also sort of magic ingredients where suddenly two songs just blend together, and then you get the flow and the dynamics. You've got to have texture, you've got to have dynamics in a show. You can't make it too demanding on an audience. You've just got to enjoy yourself, and okay, you want to have a clap there, you can have a clap there and whatever, but you know.
There's no decision been made about is there going to be such a thing as a last gig. We're just going to carry on and see how it goes.
It's about 2 years away, I think. It's a 2-year tour and an album, but I think it's about time. It's been put forward that we should call it a day. So therefore we decided to have a band meeting, and we had too much wine, so we didn't really have a decision at the end of it. And so the goodbyes are going to be a bit longer than your average. It's like getting rid of unwanted guests really after Christmas.
It could be next week, don't want to do it, or it could be in 3 years' time, or whatever.
Or when any one of us just decides to...
Keel's over.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.